Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our new top 10 topics of October 28th, 2021. So, before starting, I would just like to quote you a saying of a philosopher who said that you have to be so good that they can't ignore you. So, your preparation and your answer writing has to be so good that the UPSC examiner cannot ignore you. And that will only happen if you prepare on a daily basis. As I said in the beginning, the UPSC preparation is the very small successive steps that you take on a daily basis and not one single leap. So, moving forward, let us look at the list of topics that I will be discussing with you today. It is first that the guidelines of Swachh Bharat 2.0 and Amrit Mission 2.0 has been released. Krishi Udan 2.0 is launched. Then the second meeting of the foreign ministers of Afghan neighboring countries. The Supreme Court sets up a committee to examine the Pegasus allegations. Centre wants to keep the birth and death database with it. Niti Aayog okays a study on facial recognition technology in India. Knock every door campaign to boost the second dose vaccination, says the government under the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. India respects the UNCL law's rights, says the Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, and Sweden is all set to launch Time for India drive to boost trade. So, looking at the first topic, that is Swachh Bharat 2.0. Now, the guidelines for Swachh Bharat 2.0 have been launched. Swachh Bharat Mission along with Swachh Bharat Mission, even the Amrit Mission 2.0 details also was launched. So, the Pradhan Mantri had launched the Swachh Bharat Mission 2.0 and the Amrit Mission 2.0 on October 1st, 2021 to make the cities garbage free and water secure. Making cities sustainable is an important goal under the Sustainable Development Goals to be achieved by 2030, and these steps are in line to achieve those goals. Now, Swachh Bharat Abhiyan was instituted in 2014 to achieve a vision of a clean India and to eliminate the practice of open defecation free India by October 2nd, 2019. The first phase was a big success. Pradhan Mantri quoted Baba Sahib Ambedkar, who believed in urban development as a means of removing inequality, and the next phase of Swachh Bharat Mission and the Amrit Mission is an important steps towards fulfilling that dream of Baba Sahib, says Pradhan Mantri Modi. You can use the statement in writing your answers, especially for urbanization and urban development. So let us look at the features of what is this of the Swachh Bharat Mission 2.0. Now, the second phase envisions to make all the cities garbage free and ensure grey and black water management in the cities, other than those that are covered under Amrit, making all the urban local bodies as ODF plus. In the next slide, I have explained the meaning of ODF plus and plus ODF plus plus. Those with a population of less than 1 lakh as ODF plus plus, thereby achieving the vision of a safe sanitation in urban areas. The mission will focus on source segregation of solid waste by utilizing the principles of reduce, reuse, and recycle, meaning that those of the materials which can be recycled and reused will be segregated. Scientific processing of all types of municipal solid waste and remediation of legacy dump sites for effective solid waste management. This fulfills the recycle principle. And the outlay for Swachh Bharat Mission 2.0 is about 1.41 crore. So, what does ODF plus mean? ODF plus, a city, a ward, or a ward circle, or any rural area is given ODF plus if at any point in a day no single person is found defecating or urinating in the open and all the community and public toilets are functional and well maintained. For ODF plus plus, another point is added to this. So, along with no single person found defecating or urinating in open and all community and public toilets are functional and well maintained, the fecal sludge septic and sewage is safely managed, treated, and no discharging or dumping of untreated fecal sludge or septage happens in the water bodies or in the open areas. So, looking at the growth of India's urban population increasing from 19.9% in 1971 to 31.2% in 2011, and keeping in mind that now we are in 2021, the urban population percentage must have increased to improve the quality of life in urban areas. Access to sanitation facilities is a must. Moving on to Amrit 2.0, the guidelines for which were released, a step towards urban India, and it makes the cities Atmanirbhar and water secure. It was launched along with the Swachh Bharat Phase 2 on October 1st, 2021. So, what does Amrit 2.0 or the Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation 2.0 aim at? It aims to provide 100% water coverage or water supply to all households in around 4,700 urban local bodies. So these two schemes, the Swachh Bharat Mission Urban and Amrit, are looking at development of urban areas. It will provide 2.68 crore tap connections and 100% coverage of sewerage and septic in 500 Amrit cities. It will adopt the principles of circular economy and promote conservation and rejuvenation of surface and groundwater bodies. Now, the Amrit has been ensuring water security by adding 1.1 crore household water tap connections and 85 lakh sewer connections, thus benefiting 4 crore people. Circular economy, which is to be adopted by Amrit, is a model of production and consumption which involves sharing, leasing, reusing, repairing, refurbishing, recycling existing materials and products as long as possible, that aims to tackle the challenge of climate change, biodiversity loss. We need a circular economy because we have been taking too much from the earth, wasting too much, and also emitting too much. Therefore, circular economy has become the new norm to achieve a sustainable earth. Swachh Bharat Mission Urban and Amrit have been contributing significantly to improving the urban landscape during the last 7 years. Now, both these schemes have delivered the basic services such as sanitation, water supply. All the urban local bodies have been declared open defecation free, and 70% solid waste is being scientifically processed now. The next one is Krishi Udan 2.0. So, the Minister of Civil Aviation Jyotir Aditya Scindia informed that the scheme was launched today. So, he said that the scheme will focus on transporting biodegradable food products from, in simple words, agriculture produce from hilly areas, northeastern regions, and tribal regions across India. So, the centre launched the Krishi Udan Scheme 2.0 to boost transport of agri products. Now, under the Krishi Udan scheme, cargo related infrastructure will be built at airports in the northeast, hilly, and tribal regions to assist the farmers to transport the agriculture produce. Basically, the Krishi Udan scheme aims to provide seamless logistics support for the farmers to enhance the coverage of the market and also to double the farmer's income. Once the farmer's market widens, automatically this will add to his income, therefore achieving the goal of doubling the farmer's income. Now, the scheme was launched by the centre in September 2020. It will attain the goal of doubling the farmer's income by removing barriers in supply chain, logistics, and transportation of farm produce. Let us look some of the highlights or the features of the Krishi Udan 2.0. Now, to facilitate and incentivize the movement of agri-produce by air transportation, the government is bringing about full waiver of landing, parking, and other charges for the Indian freighters at selected airports. The scheme will be implemented in 53 airports. Strengthening of cargo related infrastructure at the airports and off airports, facilitating development of a hub and spoke model and a freight grid. Concessions will be sought from the states to reduce sales tax, etc. on the freighters so that it becomes viable for them to transport the agriculture produce. Resource pooling through establishing a convergence mechanism. This means collaboration with other governments, departments, and regulatory bodies to provide freight forwarder, airlines, and other stakeholders. Technological convergence, development of e-kaushal, that is Krishi Udan for sustainable holistic agrologistics to disseminate information to stakeholders. So the government has taken many steps recently to boost infrastructure, especially with regard to agriculture infrastructure. The government had also launched the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund with this regard. The third most important news is that the Supreme Court now set up a committee to examine the Pegasus allegations. This is regarding the snooping issue, which many people have alleged that violates their privacy. Now, while reiterating that the power in this slides, I've just made a note of the important points that the Supreme Court has said today with regard to right of privacy, and also on the government's stand of protecting the national security, and also the judicial review of the court in this regard. Let's look at them now. So, while reiterating that the power of the state to snoop into people's private space is not absolute, the Supreme Court said that invocation of national security by the state does not render the state a mute spectator, and therefore now it has involved and appointed an expert technical committee overseen by the former judge of a Supreme Court, Ravindran, to examine the allegations that the center used the Israeli software named Pegasus to spy on the citizens. Now, the Supreme Court, along with forming the committee, at the same time refused the government's, it's a mistake there in the slide, it's not court's offer, but the government's offer of forming an expert committee. The court also decided to refuse the center's offer to appoint an expert committee to investigate allegations because it said that such a course of action would violate the judicial principle against bias. That is, justice must not only be done, but also it should be seen that is being done. The court said that the country could not be a mute spectator to the Pegasus allegations when other countries had taken them seriously. The court asked the committee to submit the report expeditiously, and it posted the next hearing after 8 weeks, that is almost 2 months. It said that the fear of being spied often affected liberty and had a chilling effect. Ordinary citizens and just not activists and journalists started to drift towards self censorship, therefore, fearing the violation of liberty. Every citizen of India ought to be protected against the violations of privacy, said the Supreme Court. So, on the security concerns which was said by the government of India, let us see what the Supreme Court said. Now, the Supreme Court said that the state cannot keep a secret from the court merely on the grounds of national security and expected the judiciary to remain a mute spectator. The courts further said that the claim had to be backed by evidence to prove that disclosure of any information sought by the court would actually affect the national security of the country. And the Union of India may decline to provide the information when constitutional considerations exist, such as those pertaining to security of the state. But however, this does not mean that the state gets a free pass every time the national security is raised by the government. With regard to judicial review of the Supreme Court in this regard, it said that judicial review in national security matters was limited, but then the government cannot use this as a license to call for limited judicial review in matters such as this, when especially the rights of the citizens are being violated. And also, the claims of the government are not based on the rule of law. Now, the court said that the center must prove the facts which indicate that the information sought by the court based on the petitions must be kept secret, and their divulgence would affect national security concerns. They must justify the stand they take before the court. This is what the Supreme Court said, bringing a balance between both national security, judicial review, and on one hand protecting the rights of the citizens. The court reminded the government that petitioners do not contend that the state should not resort to surveillance or collection of data when the matter involves national security. The complainant of the petitioners is about the complaint of the petitioners is about misuse of the spyware in violation of the right to privacy of citizens. This is a main point made by the Supreme Court while justifying its stand. Now, the state can invade the citizens' privacy only for national security concerns. Let us see what the Supreme Court said in this regard. The court said surveillance to flush out terror activities is essential to protect life and liberty. A need may arise to encroach then on such times on the individual privacy to access information that is vital to protect against violence or terror. However, the state can violate a person's privacy only if it is absolutely necessary to protect the national security and the interests. It is the necessity to trespass an individual privacy should be proportional to the threat to national security, said the Supreme Court. In a democratic country governed by rule of law, indiscriminate spying on individuals cannot be allowed except with sufficient statutory safeguards and by following the procedure which is established by law under the Constitution. With this stand of the Supreme Court, now the petitioners had sought a complete overhaul of the surveillance architecture in the country. They recommended the Supreme Court to call for changing or amendment of certain rules and certain sections in the Indian Telegraph Act, the Indian Telegraph Rules, the Information Technology Act, and the Information Technology and Information Rules of 2009. So the Supreme Court very well balanced the view of national security on one hand, protecting the citizens' right to privacy, liberty on one hand, and also telling that the limited power of judicial review cannot be curtailed by the center by always taking the stand of national security without providing the data or the basis for its argument or justification. The next news is that center wants to keep birth and death database. Now the government plans to amend the Registration of Birth and Death Act 1969. This amendment will enable the government to maintain a register of births and deaths at the national level. Presently, the registration of births and deaths is done by the local registrar appointed by the states. In the proposed amendment, the government says that the chief registrar appointed by the states will maintain a unified database at the state level and then integrate it with the data at the national level, which will be maintained by the Registrar General of India, meaning the center will be having a parallel repository of data along with the states. The amendment has been proposed by the Registrar General of India, which works under the Union Ministry of Home. States usually send annual statistic reports to the Registrar General of India. Now, a new section 3A is proposed to be inserted in this act called as Registration of Births and Deaths Act 1969, which says Registrar General of India shall maintain the database of registered birth and deaths at the national level that may be used with the approval of the central government to update the following. What are they? Let us see. So it can use this data to update the population register under the Citizenship Act of 1955, electoral registers and electoral rolls prepared under the Representation of People Act 1951, Aadhaar database prepared under the Aadhaar Act of 2016, ration card database prepared under the National Food Security Act of 2013, passport database prepared under the Passport Act, and driving license database under the Motor Vehicle Act of 2019 and other databases at the national level subject to the provisions of Section 17 of the Act of 1969. So with this proposal of the center wanting to maintain a parallel repository of data at the center, let us see how this will help. Now, especially this data with the center will help in security related activities such as using of fake IDs, or fake bank accounts. Now, the direct benefit transfer scheme will benefit because the government will be able to know who are the beneficiaries who are still there, etc., or the beneficiaries which will come in the future. For example, the schemes for smaller children, like food subsidy schemes, Right to Education Act, education development schemes, also midday meal schemes, etc. The government will be easily able to detect the fraud. Pensions will benefit. There are certain times when people die, but still the pensions are being taken from the government, and therefore the government's money will be saved. Also, removal of accounts of the disease so that they cannot be used for illegal gains. The next most important topic is that the second meeting of the foreign ministers of Afghan neighboring countries. Now, as of recent, we have been seeing that how there was a humanitarian aid conference with regard to Afghanistan, calling for the countries to provide aid, especially when winter is coming and the country will face in food shortages, and also looking at the plight of women and children there. Now, the foreign ministers of Pakistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, China, Russia met for smooth transition of government in Kabul. This meeting was especially to call on the Taliban to ensure a democratic government, a participatory form of government in the country there. Iran said that the Iran, who hosted the meeting, said that the Taliban must adopt a friendly approach towards the neighbors and take necessary measures to assure that there is no threat to the neighbors from Afghanistan. Now, Afghanistan is on the cusp of a humanitarian crisis, and the UN agencies have warned that more than half of the country could face acute food shortages this winter. US and other Western nations are reluctant to provide funds, on the other hand, to Taliban unless the Taliban assure them of democratic rule and they upholding the humanitarian rights along with rights of women. There are already news that the women and the especially the girl children are not allowed to attend school, and there have been large scale human rights violation. Iran, which shares a 900-kilometer border with Afghanistan, did not recognize the Taliban during the prior rule between 1996 to 2001. But Tehran now has appeared to soften its stance in the recent time. The Islamic Republic of Iran insists in the establishment of an inclusive government with the presence of effective participation of all ethnic and religious groups in Afghanistan. Taliban recently formed an all-male cabinet made up entirely of the members of the group and almost exclusively of ethnic Pashtuns. It has also severely restricted women's right to work and study promptly, and this has called in for international condemnation. Now, the third meeting of the foreign ministers will be held by China. So, if the Taliban wants the cooperation from other countries, especially with regard to aid, then it has to stand on its word of a democratic government and especially respect the rights of women and children. The next most important topic is Niti Aayog okays the study on facial recognition technology in India. This is important from your GS paper 3, especially science and technology. Now, Niti Aayog has approved a proposal to conduct a study on the use of facial recognition technology in India. Let me tell you that this technology is being used presently in certain airports. Now, this study will be conducted by an independent think tank. So, facial recognition technology has been used in many countries in the recent years. In India, it has been used in some airports in some states. However, there have been concerns regarding the privacy issues, and more so because India still does not have a data protection law, and also a law or a regulation with regard to facial recognition technology. Now, till date, there is no legislation to regulate the technology in India. This therefore raises even more concerns. Also, the European Union has recently moved in the direction of regulating emerging technologies such as AI, facial recognition, and other issues related to this. The big concern with regard to facial recognition technology in India is especially with the level of accuracy. There is a need to regulate the technology on the lines of European countries. Let us look at some of the uses that the facial recognition technology can be used. Now, security companies can use it to secure their premises. Immigration checkpoints can ensure smarter control of the border. Fleet management can secure their vehicles, especially with regard to data of the drivers, etc. The next most important topic is Knock Every Door campaign to boost second dose vaccination. As we have seen recently, India successfully completed the 100 crore vaccine doses in the country. But however, there are still concerns because not all the whole population has not been covered under the first dose. Also, the percentage of population covered under the two doses is very less, and more so, children have not been vaccinated yet. There is a large scale difference among the vaccination in the states also. The most populated states, for example, UP, Bihar, Tamil Nadu, etc., have still not completed even the dosage of first dose of vaccine in these states. So the percentage of the population covered is very less. This calls for improving the vaccination coverage, faster production of vaccines and availability to the states, making the citizens and the people more aware to come forward and vaccinated. And one more step is door to door campaign. Therefore, this step is in this regard. Knock Every Door campaign to boost the second dose vaccination, says the Ministry of Health. Now, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare is going to start Har Ghar Dastak Knock Every Door campaign to start in the districts with low vaccination rates so that they motivate the people to come towards getting their jab. According to Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, there are 10.34 crore people in the country who had missed the second dose of vaccine that they were due to take. Now, the ministry has said that for the next 1 month, healthcare workers will go door to vaccinate the people eligible for second dose and those who have not even taken the first dose. The minister said that 77% of eligible population in India has been vaccinated against the COVID with only first dose. 32% people have received both the doses. This percentage is very less. Lakshadweep, Sikkim, Goa, Ladakh, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Chandigarh, Himachal Pradesh, Mizoram, Daman Diu, Arunachal Pradesh, Jammu and Kashmir have successfully administered both doses of vaccines to more than half of the population. In the diagram just beside, I have showed you it depicts the percentage of eligible population receiving two doses. So the number not even crosses 20%. In Kerala, it is 12.2%, Delhi 12%, Gujarat 11%, Uttarakhand 10%, the least is Bihar 3%. Therefore, there is the need for the government to speed up the vaccination drive, especially it can use the public places to keep in mobile vaccination centers, ask the people to come forward and get their jabs and provide more doses. Especially the states should also look into the matter of vaccine wastage, which is happening on a huge scale. So minimizing the vaccine wastage to zero will be very helpful for the states too, and also will save the government's money. The next important is that India respects the UNCLOS rights. Now, this was said by the Defence Minister Rajnath Singh when he was addressing the Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue that was jointly organized by Navy and National Maritime Foundation. He said that India is committed to respecting the rights of all nations laid down under the United Nations Convention on the Law of Seas. So in this slide, I've just given you a brief idea of what this convention is about. It sets the basis for marine and maritime activities because this convention was even said at the United Nations conference, the meeting by when India held the presidency in August, calling all the nations to ratify the convention, especially the United States. So the United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea and the Law of Sea Treaty, or also called as the Law of Sea Convention, came into being in 1982. It is meant to protect the marine resources and recognizes the rights of the states in a limited manner until their exclusive economic zones with regard to maritime activities. Now, before the convention, there was a school of thought called as freedom of seas, meaning that any country can have the right to reap the benefits of marine resources without any boundaries. This led to large-scale exploitation by few countries of marine resources and also the resources which are found on the seabed. And therefore, this convention came out to stop such activities. Now, the Law of Sea provides for full rights to nations for 200-mile zone from their shoreline to the sea. The sea and the ocean bed Extending this area is regarded as exclusive economic zone, and any country can use the waters for economic utilization. The IMO plays a very vital role in operation of the UNCLOS, along with the IMO organizations like the International Whaling Commission and the International Seabed Authority are vital parties in the functional areas of nautical law. Also, the other countries cannot violate the exclusive economic zone of the other nations. There is provisions regarding to maritime activities in the form of maritime exercises, etc., also in the convention. So even though the UNCLOS has 160 member parties, US is still not sanctioned or ratified the nautical law. The main reason for the US not sanctioning the law is because its disagreement about a part, and this part deals with the minerals found on the seabed on the exclusive economic zone. The International Seabed Authority was established on the basis of this part and called for equitable distribution of proceeds of such seabed. Now US is opposed to this theory, and that is why it has not ratified the UNCLOS. The next important is Sweden is set to launch the time of for India drive. This recent summit has happened between the Sweden and India, and there is large scale collaboration, especially in greener technologies and also innovation between Sweden and India. Now, Sweden will launch a trade promotion event called as the Time for India to boost bilateral trade, and hinted that the government will make more liberal the post COVID visa policy for India very soon. In the virtual summit between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Swedish counterpart, they decided to enhance the momentum of their partnership like never before, covering strategic areas on defense, counterterrorism, peace, security, climate change, science and technology, startup innovation, medical innovation, and industry integration. So, this brings me to the end of the top 10 topics for this day. See you all tomorrow with another list. Until then, bye bye.